A beloved Canadian retail chain is making a comeback.
Who gives you more, Zellers or the competition?
Come on, you remember those commercials or collecting Club Z points during family shopping trips to Zellers? Now, a decade after most of the locations in this country were closed, Hudson's Bay Company is looking at bringing back the iconic discount retailer. CBC business reporter Anis Hadari is in Calgary with more on the return of Zellers.
Essentially, Natasha, the Bay is trying to bring back Zellers without having to bring back all of the big box retail space that they had before. You know, they want to tap into the memories that people have of this store without actually having to build hundreds of them. You know, if you remember 10 years ago, they got rid of all of the Zellers, essentially, except for a few, as Target moved into the zone. Now, what they are opening instead is what they're calling an e-commerce website. So there's going to be a Zellers website. They'll have new products to sell there, and they are going to have a physical presence. They're going to open up Zellers pop-ups inside of existing Bay stores. So there are fewer Bay stores than there used to be Zellers is. But with this new pop-up concept, if you have a Bay store nearby, there might be a Zellers inside of it. We won't know until they actually open them up. The company says it wants to open up, or it wants to offer housewares, toys, a lot of the things that people used to go to Zellers for every day. There will also be a private label Zellers brand. We don't entirely know what that's going to look like, but I'm pulling for the Zed Cola to come back.
So, as Anis explained, it's a bit of a business story, but it's also about pop culture and nostalgia. So for more on that part of the conversation, let's turn to Nico Stratus. Nico is a culture writer and podcast host and based here in Toronto. Nico, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, Nico, the news is out about Zellers 2.0. What was your reaction?
I mean, my first reaction was, who is this for? You know, and I'm still kind of asking myself that question, if I'm being perfectly honest.
What do you mean? Like, you're not, because I'm not going to lie, I'm super into it. So clearly you are not.
I mean, I'm hesitant. It's just such a thing. This is like a trick of late stage capitalism, where it trades on our nostalgia while sort of misrepresenting what nostalgia means to us. You know, like a place like Zellers, we think of those stores because we think of, you know, when we're younger and when our lives were maybe a little bit more innocent. Because, you know, the nice thing about nostalgia is you get to live in your past without actually having to deal with everything else that actually existed at that time. We just get to remember those memories. So it's really sort of trading on that. Like, you know, remember going to Zellers with your mom. Well, now you can maybe go there at some Hudson Bay stores. You know, it's a different environment and we really don't know what it looks like. So it just sort of feels like a bit of a bait and switch.
Interesting, because I was speaking with our colleagues in the newsroom and saying, if you look at music now, it sounds so synthy. It sounds like something from the 80s. And if you look at popular hit shows, they're either a remake or a reboot or something like Stranger Things, which is all about recreating the 80s and 90s. So it just seems like Zellers would fit into that era of like, we just want a softer, easier, gentler time before mean people on Twitter, maybe.
I mean, I totally understand that appeal. And look, I am right there. I write about the 90s a lot. I am right there. And like nostalgia is very much my wheelhouse. But I also like understand my desire to sort of live in those spaces. And, you know, like, yeah, a lot of like music and TV and other cultural touchstones in this moment are referencing the 80s and 90s, but they're not taking sort of for lack of a better phrase, the corpse of what used to exist and dragging it around and bringing it out and making it sort of dance for us. They're taking those things and they're reinventing them for the modern age. And, you know, if the Hudson Bay Company wanted to do that, they could just do it. They don't need to, you know, like trick us with Zellers, but maybe charge us more money for things. Or, you know, we really don't know what it's going to look like. Will Zed Cola come back? What are anybody's Club Z points still valid? There's lots of questions here.
Oh, I know, that's a hot button topic, because you know there's a lot of grandpas and grandmas out there who are like, they held on to that card, right? Okay, yeah. So do you think this is going to be successful, or people will see it for what you're saying it is? It's quote unquote a bait and switch, or that hey, it's just capitalism. They're cashing in on our need to feel safer.
I mean, I think it's going to be a mixed bag for sure, and we really won't know until we see it. My initial reaction was hesitant just because, you know, we don't really if we needed Zellers, if we were going to get Zellers back, we should get what Zellers was, which is a place for, low to middle class income families to be able to go and afford clothes and housewares and stuff like that. We don't really know what we're getting with this. It might just be, we sometimes see these companies do like branded streetwear and stuff like that, where it's, it's priced a little bit higher because it's priced for collectors, and it's, it's sort of priced for people to resell on eBay. And it's like, well, we're not really doing the thing that Zellers wasn't designed to do, which was, give these families a place to go and shop. Are we really doing that? Or are we just capitalizing on the name in order to trick people into spending money at the Hudson Bay Company?
So apparently Zellers launched a pop-up last year in a couple of different locations, including Burlington, Ontario, and in the Montreal area. Do you have any sense of how that went and how people reacted? And was it those cheap, low prices that did make life a little bit easier for working class or middle class families?
The fact that I've asked a couple of people about this today, and I remember those pop-ups happening, but I heard really nothing about it, and really nothing came of it. So I have to imagine that it couldn't have been that successful. Otherwise, when this was announced this morning, we would all be like, yes, right, remember those successful pop-ups that happened last year, which we're kind of not doing, which tells you about, if we can't remember something a year later, admittedly, look, it's been a busy year, but still, the fact that we're not remembering it means it probably wasn't as successful as they wanted it to be. So I just, I want to be excited about it because, look, like I said, I love nostalgia, and I would love to go back to those times when everything was simpler. But the long and short of it is things are not simple right now. And, it's a really hard thing to get too excited about without kind of seeing it for what it is.
Okay, then you know what, before I let you go, what is a more authentic experience? If some of us want to feel that sweet 90s nostalgia, what could we do? What are real authentic experiences?
I mean, that is a really hard question to answer in 2022 because so much of our world is fabricated around us. Be that social media or the things we buy are all so aggressively marketed to us. We've given away all our privacy to such a degree that you do have to wonder what is authentic and what is not. I would say, buying secondhand, doing garage sales, finding stuff that is just needs to be repurposed and reused and reloved. Those things, I did that a lot when I was a kid in the 90s. And I know a lot of other families, especially low income to middle class families, would, repurpose stuff if it wasn't broken and all that. We didn't buy a lot of new things like we do now. So maybe more of that, we're losing a really good value village at Bloor and Lansdowne. And things like that, we really need more of that almost. And that feels to me like that is just as much a part of that 90s experience as a Zellers or whatever.
Nico, really thoughtful conversation. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Nico Stratus is in Toronto. She's a culture writer and podcast host.